It is so good to be back here with you this morning. My goodness. Okay, how's that? Let's see if this stays in place. If I don't move, it will. But as the worship team can tell you, the chances of that happening are pretty slim. It's good to be back with you today after being away for the last 2 weeks on Sunday mornings, but it's been wonderful to worship with you through our online avenues and to be able to join here with you at Trinity. We're in the midst of our sermon series that we are calling this Easter season Future Church. And if you have not been here the last several weeks, we are looking forward, right? On Easter Sunday, we celebrate that Jesus Christ is not dead, but that he is alive, and that we give really, that's what we are celebrating, that Jesus Christ does not stay dead, that Jesus Christ isn't still in the tomb, but that Jesus Christ is alive and in the midst of us. And our readings this post-Easter season is about the future that God calls us into through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And so several weeks ago when we started this session, I used the image of our rear view mirrors in our cars, which if you drive, you have one because it's required by law, because it is required that occasionally you look into that mirror to see what's behind you. But we know that if you only look through that mirror, you're not going to get to where you're wanting to go. And pretty soon you'll find yourself on the side of the road, or you will have possibly injured somebody because you would have hit them, because you're not looking forward into the future of what's coming. And the same is true for the church. In this sermon series, we are recognizing two very important aspects. First, we're looking and asking God, where are you moving us into the future? And two, where are you currently moving us? Where are you currently at work in us? Because the church, again, is not a building, but it is the people. That is paramount to us as Lutherans when we say that we believe in the priesthood of all believers, that the church is the people, and that God is at work in us and moving amongst us, and that our faith is not this static, but rather a dynamic and living aspect of who we are. And so today we're talking about our proclamation, looking at 1 Peter and this beautiful verse that we use at our baptismal liturgy from Matthew's Gospel. I think I was in second or third grade, though, when I remember my dad coming up the stairs. I was not one to want to do a lot of homework when I came home from school. And in our parent-teacher conferences as a child, the teachers said, Fritz is really struggling with his reading. And in the 90s, early 90s, I know a very long time ago, some of you don't remember them, but it was the early 90s, a program had came out that my school had recommended to my parents purchasing called Hooked on Phonics. And it literally came in this giant white box with these cassette tapes and with these books. And no matter how hard my parents tried to work with me on this, the last thing I wanted to do was to sit home and listen to a cassette tape and practice reading. And so after one particularly challenging day, I kind of stormed away from the dining room table, and it was not yet quite dinner time, and went up to my bedroom and was doing whatever when my dad knocked on the door and came in and said, "Hey, we really have to do this. Let's do it together." And my dad took me back down to the dining room table, and for what felt like the next 5 hours, which was really probably 15 minutes, let's be honest, we practiced on that lesson for that day using the cassette tape and the books. I blame my parents for my love of reading, because if it wasn't for their patience And if it wasn't for their dedication and for their hard work and their unlimited amount of love, I don't think that I would have become the reader that I am today. Literally, the reader who, like, in 9th grade English class read over 300 books. And you got stickers placed on the wall to show that how much reading you had accomplished. Yes, I did read some of the books of the Bible because they're like one page, but they counted because they were books. If it hadn't been for my mom and my dad setting that firm foundation, for building that cornerstone, using resources like Hooked on Phonics, which I don't even think they make anymore, I don't think I would end up being the reader that I am today. And the parent that I hope to become, that when my son Thomas, who turns a year old next Saturday, that when he begins to say, I don't want to read and do this, I will draw from that deep well of parental patience and just say, let's do this together, son. You have to learn how to read. It will only pay off benefits into the future. In our first reading today in 1 Peter, there's no mention of Hooked on Phonics and no mention of needing to learn how to read. But we hear how important it is to have a firm foundation. We hear about the cornerstone and how important of laying the cornerstone properly is. We hear how Jesus Christ is the cornerstone of our faith and of our lives. We hear in 1 Peter, not you will be living stones, but rather Lynn said, you are a living stone. Not because of anything you've done, not because you've now decided to become a Christian, but because of who God says you are. 1 Peter is writing to folks who are baby Christians. They are still drinking breast milk, essentially. Some of them are Jewish people who have become to know Jesus. Others are Gentiles. Jerusalem, their capital, has been destroyed. The temple is in rubble. It is about 30 years after Jesus Christ has been crucified. It's somewhere between 60 and 90 CE when these words from 1 Peter are written. He is talking to a church that is struggling, a church that is trying to figure out how do they mesh together all these different cultures. There is a sense of impatience in them in the land of Asia Minor, which is the farther inland from the Mediterranean Sea. The Roman Empire is controlling them. And the writer of 1 Peter says, you are living stones. Jesus Christ is the cornerstone. And here is the reality. You don't need the temple, for you are the temple. You are God's people, and God is going to be at work in you. Jesus has set you on the firm foundation as the cornerstone. Those of you who have done any building any time, you know how important the cornerstone was. In today's world, it's usually just more of a symbolic stone, a time capsule of sorts. But back in the day, the cornerstone was would tell you if the building is going to stay standing and it's going to be structurally secure or not. It is how all the other stones were determined of where they would be placed. We have several of them here at Trinity. We have like 5 of them here at Trinity. For each extension that we've built, we've put cornerstones in here. In each of them contain time capsules. We placed a cornerstone here at Trinity, not necessarily as a cornerstone, but in 2021, we buried a time capsule, a cornerstone of sorts in our circle driveway, so that way we could look back upon how the church got through COVID in 2020 and in 2021. And we blessed it. Walk around the building, you'll see others of them here in the front of the sanctuary or over by door 18. There's one out in the columbarium from when we placed the first stone of our columbarium on the original wall. There's one on the new wing after Heisen Hall was built and that extension was on. You see them everywhere, reminding us of the past, of where we have come from, that point ultimately to where we are going. If you forget nothing else today, and you go to brunch after church, I hope that you do not forget, dear church, that you are a living stone. And that the faith that you have, the person that you are as a Christian, is because of the living stones before you. My parents certainly did not learn how to read on their own. Neither of my parents went to college. I am a first-generation student. My parents, because after I became a therapist and you have to dig into your family of origin, and I started to interview my parents for family of origin stuff and ask them why they didn't go to college and what was it like to see their firstborn go off to college and then to seminary to get a master's degree and now to go for postmaster's work. And the stories that came out of that you don't really know and hear unless you intentionally ask your parents. And it goes on and on. My parents had to learn reading from somebody because it's not just something that you often pick up on your own. And it's because somebody laid the foundation for them. And my grandparents learned it from someone, right? And that is the same for our Christian faith. We are living stones, because we trace back to the saints before us who have taught us all the way back to Jesus Christ, who is the cornerstone. We are the living stones. And that means that we have a job to make sure that we are planting firm foundations for the saints of today and of tomorrow. Of the saints of today, like our trebles, who it's their last week singing with us. After this week, they'll take summer break, and we won't hear from them again until the fall. And of the Trinity trebles, who are not yet here, who have not yet been invited to join a kids' choir, and to learn how to sing and to grow confidence through that. We are called to be living stones so that our light shines in a world that is dark and is scary, where there are threats all around us. Like you last week, horrified that we live in such a world where elected leaders are threatened, even if we disagree with them. Where people think it's okay to take vengeance upon others, to threaten others with violence. We as a church are called to proclaim that we are living stones and that violence is never the answer, that hate is never the answer, but rather to preach in a God, to live our lives in such a way that Jesus' love is for everyone of all time and in all places. And that as living stones, to live our lives so that the light of Christ reflects in us and through us, even in those that we might disagree with. All human beings are created in the image of God, and all human beings should have that opportunity to hear of God's incredible love and hope for them. The world needs our proclamation. The world needs to know of God's love. And our job as those who are living stones is to look for those places in the world, for those people in our networks, in our schools, in our communities, in our workplaces who do not yet know of God's love for them, and to share that good news, to share God's love so that they too may have the chance to be a living stone, not because of what they've done, but because of who God is. Amen.